Your first snapshot in the Baroness Casey report, is it something that I wonder whether didn't surprise you, but nonetheless you welcomed?
I am over the moon, purely because Louise Casey came to me in February and asked me to meet her. I met her for a few hours and I told her everything I've learned over the past 20 years. She already knew that many of these things existed, but she thought they were in the past. She came back to me a month ago, 3 weeks ago, and asked me to bring together a group of survivors, and I took 10 survivors and families from all over the UK so she could hear it. The difference with Baroness Casey's report is that she has had the courage to report what I have said to many, many people in the past 15 years, and they all raise their eyebrows and they appear shocked. They go away and they water down the truth. This time, this is not watered down. It is true. And unfortunately, in the past 20 years since I first saw this, can you imagine the number of children that have been abandoned and failed and raped and abused? The number of perpetrators, the number of child rapists that have been allowed to continue to destroy children's lives because the authorities, successive governments, have deliberately turned a blind eye. These were not mistakes. This was neglect of duty at the highest level.
So many places I could go with that. I guess the first question has to be, do you think, therefore, that people in positions of authority over the last 15 years have to take responsibility?
I don't think, I know.
Some of what these children have experienced?
Yeah, they are, for me, criminally responsible. I want to see some of them in prison. And I'm not pulling any punches. These are not mistakes. And the people who have been guilty of this neglect of duty are those whose duty it is to protect children. There is no excuse for failing to do that. If you don't know, then you can apologise. If you do know and you choose to do nothing, that is culpable. And for me, it is a criminal neglect of duty.
Local leaders, police leaders, Westminster leaders, or all of the above?
All of them, right to the top.
Dating back to when?
Well, I first became aware of what we called grooming gangs when I worked on Operation Augusta as a police officer in 2004 and 5. From that day, I saw Greater Manchester Police close that job down when we had 97 identified abusers that we knew were raping children. We had 36 children. The official report put together by Andy Burnham, after I continually spoke out about it, reported in 2020. The official finding of that report was that Greater Manchester Police and Manchester Social Services had a Gold Command Group meeting where they deliberately closed that job down because they were not prepared to put resources into it. That's a choice. They decided that these children did not matter, and they allowed all those men to continue to walk the streets and rape children for another 20 years.
One of the phrases that Baroness Casey used was that some of these things were either covered up or didn't get the due attention they deserved because people in leadership positions feared being labelled as racist, which is obviously no excuse. Do you think that is the sum total of the motivations, or does it go beyond that? Does it go deeper than that? For
me, I have tiptoed along this path for the past 15 years. And I remember when I first resigned from the police, one of the first interviews I did was on the Today programme with John Humphreys. And I remember he referred to Asian grooming gangs. And I said, they're not Chinese and Japanese and from Thailand. They are predominantly Pakistani Muslim men. And I'm talking about this particular kind of child abuse. I know that, children are raped in families, the Catholic Church, the Church of England, Harvey Weinstein, Jimmy Savile, we have abusers everywhere. But in this particular kind of gang-related abuse, they are predominantly Pakistani Muslim men. And I have seen, in my experience, obviously I set my own charity up, the Maggie Oliver Foundation. We've helped 5,000 survivors and victims in the past 6 years. My final point is that I have seen nationalities that are not Pakistani men in these gangs. But many of them are Afghanistani or Iranian or Iraqi, but they are still all Muslim. And it is an issue when we see increasing numbers of illegal immigration into the country, where many of those immigrants share the same belief systems and different ways of treating women. I am really, really grateful to Baroness Casey for gripping that nettle, because if we don't, as a country, we are just abandoning more generations of children to the horrific, life-destroying crime that I have seen again and again. So I am very grateful to her.
I've got two more little areas I want to get to. I want to talk about specifically this government and Labour in a moment. Yesterday, Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, was on, and there's, as I said, we'll come to Labour and how the rhetoric was used by the Prime Minister, say, 6 months ago. But is it, in your eyes, legitimate for the Conservative Party to try and say they've been pushing for this, or do you think they have to take more responsibility for not doing enough over the prior 14 years?
I'm afraid that the buck stops at everybody's door. And I am sick of party political game playing in such an important subject that destroys lives. Conservatives have been equally negligent, as are Labour. And this should not be a party political conversation. This should be about child safety. It should be about taking responsibility when you're leading the police or leading social services for protecting children. And for them to turn it into a political football is quite honestly horrific. It's shameful. And that's where we've gone wrong. All the parties should be joining together. They should be fighting this national scandal, which is what it has been. And, you know, in January, I'm sure you're going to go on to it, but Elon Musk tweeted and it hit international news headlines. It shouldn't have taken him to highlight it in this way, because our country knew. And I have had conversations. I have met Rishi Sunak, Suella Braverman, I've lost count of the number of political figures and people at the top, chief constables, the IOPC, the Children's Commissioner, the Home Office. I have shared what Baroness Casey has shared in this report with all of them. She's the only one to now who has listened.
So final question on this. I mean, I guess sort of in light of some of the rhetoric from the government 6 months or so ago, what confidence do you have? You clearly welcome the contents of Baroness Casey's report, but there's a long way to go to seeing that implemented, to seeing action taken. And I say a long way to go because some of these reports can take an awful long time to carry out. What confidence do you have, and what do you need to see that this is a turning point?
For me, at this moment in time, it's a PR exercise. You can announce a public inquiry. The questions are, who is going to lead it? What are the terms of reference? Are the recommendations going to sit on a shelf? I want Baroness Casey to lead this. The other thing that is very relevant is that coincidentally yesterday my legal team served papers on the government that I am taking them, or my charity, the Maggie Oliver Foundation, is taking them to a judicial review to force them to implement the 20 recommendations of the previous national inquiry that have sat on a shelf with no action. Things like, you know, a Minister for Children in the Cabinet to absolutely prevent pain control mechanisms and tactics being used on children, the mandatory recording of ethnicity, of culture, of religion, of nationality in any sexual abuse case. Those things were already recommended, and successive governments have failed to implement them. So this inquiry, at the moment, the government are backed in a corner. Public opinion is firmly on my side and the side of all the victims. Whether the government will want to see that through, I don't know. Is this going to be another Brexit with somebody driving it who actually doesn't want an outcome? That's the question. So, yes, it's a good day in that, but the good day is that Baroness Casey has stripped away all the smoke and mirrors, all the nonsense, all the lies, all the cover-ups, and now it's out there for everybody to see. And that is a monumental day, and this has been 20 years of my life, and it's the first time that I have seen somebody truthfully tell it how it is, after listening to survivors and victims and people who deal with this every single day.